What's up, guys, and welcome to the Men's Empowerment Network podcast. I'm Joshua, your host, and I am super excited about today's episode. Today, we are doing our very first interview, and I can't wait to introduce this awesome dude to you. This guy has been through the ringer with alcohol and drugs and has come out on the other side to be fulfilling his dreams, overcoming adversity, becoming vulnerable, learning to communicate, and ultimately improving his life in every single aspect. And, he's got such wisdom for you guys and really drives home the fact that these are issues that men need to be talking about, need to be communicating with each other, and empowering each other to become more liberated and more free and more happy in life. And so, without further ado, my friends, please welcome Cory Clement. All right, brother. Well, heck yeah, I really appreciate you joining me here today. We talked a little bit about what's on tap for today. So, if you want to just start off and introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about yourself and what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm grateful to be here as well. Appreciate you taking the time to have me on here. My name's Cory, 37. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Born and raised, been here all my life. Me and you both obviously have met through the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, where we've been trudging that road to try and become a better person and work on ourselves one day at a time. And tomorrow will actually be 10 months clean and sober for me. Tomorrow's 10 months for me. And so just really finally getting into that comfort zone, doing the work, and been really thinking about this whole idea of pushing myself out there more and talking to more people and getting myself more comfortable being vulnerable and in the eyes of anybody else other than myself. So doing this is really cool and hand in hand. No coincidence, man.
Yeah, man, for sure. Congratulations on 10 months. That's fucking awesome, bro.
I appreciate it, man. I think this will be the first time, if I reaching that year will be a huge milestone. It's been a very long time since I've been able to maintain right around this time frame that I'm at. It's always around that 8, 9, 10 month mark where things get a little rocky and crazy for me. But finally, something's clicked and things have been a little bit different this time. And doing things that make me uncomfortable and are nerve wracking to me are a huge part of that for me, including the idea of anybody being able to see me and have their own free judgments to criticize or critique or analyze or dissect. It's terrifying, but at the same time, it's something I've always wanted to do. So in order to do it, if you want to see how something's going to turn out, you can do what I've usually done most of my life, which is, sit back and collect dust, or, you can actually take the action, just see what happens and take the risk.
Absolutely, bro. So you mentioned that usually around this time frame is when you kind of revert back to old behaviors. How long have you been on this journey?
Off and on. I think my first AA meeting was actually probably when I'm going to say 18, 19 years old. So it's been quite a long time, off and on, in and out. Never taken it seriously all the way, though. And it was just a very, very slow, grueling process of finally getting to a place where I was ready to do what I had to do and kind of get myself out of the own way. I got in trouble when I was a young kid, and in order to lower a fine, I think I was barely out of high school. Actually, to skip back, I think I was still in high school, and I got in trouble with a bunch of my friends and got a big fine for underage drinking. And if I attended these underage drinking classes and addiction classes, they would lower the fine. And so I had to go in order to not get a big whooping from my mom. So I went to these classes, and it took, I think it was maybe a month long, and it took like 2.5 hours to get to these classes because it was in the suburbs, because we were in a completely different area outside of the city. And I remember going to that class and having the teacher pull me to the side at the end, and they pass or they fail you. And if they fail you, you got to keep going to the classes.
Oh,
And I'm pretty sure she passed everybody. And she said, I'm passing you just because you live so far away. And I want you to focus on going back to school. But I want to look you in the eyes and tell you, you're going to have a huge drinking problem when you get older. And I remember laughing and going to a keg and drinking a bunch of beer later, laughing about it. And to this day, I wish I could meet that girl and just talk to her, man. Like, that girl sits in my mind. She just knew just from feeling me out. And I hardly said a word. I just sat there. But off and on, I always did meetings. Just half-heartedly. I would go to meetings before I was even 21, knowing that there was a problem. I'd sit in the back. I'd run out before it was over. I'd come in late. All those generic cliches. For me, I want to sit there and try and act like it's a super unique situation when it comes to this, but it's not. I would go into meetings and try and sneak in and squirm in and not participate and think that that was going to be enough. And I would convince myself that that was enough. And over again, it just never worked out. I would never do the steps. I would never commit to getting phone numbers or looking at that big book and doing anything that was actually suggested. And it just led to constant relapses and more of a downward spiral. And I got to a point where maybe 3-4 years ago, I actually finally got a sponsor, but I still wasn't willing to be completely open and vulnerable. There's still certain things I wasn't too comfortable with. And it led to another relapse about a little over 10 months ago now. And it's crazy. This time around, this last relapse, it didn't get as bad as it usually got, but something just hit me. I don't know if it's a little bit of age and getting older, or the fatigue it's getting hard. It gets harder and harder to carry on with a relapse, man. It's a huge hassle and job. It's a lot easier to stay sober, and something just hit me to jump into a meeting again. And I found a men's group on Zoom meetings. I was so beat up, I didn't want to leave my house, and I didn't even feel like going to an in-person meeting. I jumped on Zoom and found a group of men, and I found a little bit of hope and connection there. And thankfully I stuck and stayed. And that's also the same meeting where me and you met. And that's a huge aspiration and inspiration for me, is letting people know that, because so many people think that if you don't go to in-person meetings, face-to-face meetings, some people question the success of online meetings and online Zoom-based recovery and stuff like that. And it's there, man. If you want it, it's there. It's been a game changer for me.
There's a lot of details in your story that I can absolutely relate to. I've been on this journey for over 15 years now, in and out, in and out. I'd be able to put together some time, and then eventually I think I got it, and then I'm heading for the hills again. But like you, I just kind of slunk in, stayed against the wall, didn't talk to anyone, bounced 5 minutes before the meeting let out, so I wouldn't have to hold hands with anyone, and not get that connection. And for me, over the course of my life, I've just built up these walls that there was a lot going on as to where it was insecurity, not feeling good enough to actually be worthy of connecting with other people, but then also feeling unworthy of, why would anyone even want to connect to me? Absolutely. And I think it was it Woody Allen? I may have my guys mixed up, but I don't want to be a part of a club that would have me as a member. And that's how I felt. But what about you? I mean, what was your experience like? And
it was definitely many of those same things. And just in general, the more I reflect, the more I realize how, and I can still fall into this category now if I'm not careful and just don't do what I have to do. It's just, I was always just a walking contradiction, man. I wanted help. I wanted people to like me and talk to me. I wanted everybody in that AA meeting to come over and help me get better and take care of it, but I wasn't willing to meet them halfway. I always thought that if I sat here, everybody could read my mind and figure out what was going on and how to fix it. I was always screaming on the inside, but I would never let anybody know that, right? I could be minutes away from drinking or wanting to try and harm myself. But if somebody asked me how I was doing, I'm the kind of guy that would nod and say, I'm fine, man. You don't ask me. I'm good, And it was a complete opposite all the time. And same thing, you talk about, especially with your little network and this thing you got going on with men's empowerment, and then breaking those stereotypes. That was a huge thing for me too, is that old school value of guys aren't supposed to be crying, guys aren't supposed to be talking about their feelings too much. You're supposed to be cool and big and tough. if you see the kids from the neighborhood, what are they going to think? No girl's going to accept the guy that's being, he's sitting around crying, talking about things that hurt his feelings and crash that ego, So shattering that was a big thing this time around for me as well.
How did you go about shattering that? Have you shattered it, or what's the process like for you?
I don't, I don't want to sound too, it's definitely not negative. It's just more of a way of me reminding myself that I'm going to have to keep doing this. But just like I feel firmly how they say that you can never fully, this disease is always sitting around waiting, doing push-ups in the parking lot. My mental health and drinking and my addictions are always waiting for me to take over me again and grab a hold of me. So I can never stand still and rest on my laurels. I always have to fight this away, or, I go back to my old ways. And to me, just beating myself into submission all the time is the key to this. I get comfortable when I finally start opening up, and then I say, I did enough work, I'm going to step back, and I get nervous again, I get shy again. I have to consistently push myself out of my comfort zone, and consistently opening up to other men, and seeing other men get vulnerable was a big thing. I put a big focus on being around other men, because that was one of the biggest things I feared, was being myself around men, and it paid off for me so far this time around.
Excellent. Yeah, I grew up in a household of primarily feminine energy. I have three sisters and a mom. My dad was always working, and so that's the environment that I grew up in. And so for me, like, forming other connections with guys was ridiculously difficult. Like, I didn't have any guy friends in high school, college. I forced myself into a fraternity, thinking that, maybe now I could finally, get some of that. But even in those groups, I felt, so um, uh, like out of place.
On the outside, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, can totally relate to that. And that's I grew up not so much in an all female dominated upbringing, but because of how unaccepting I was of myself, I had the daddy issues. My dad ran off and wasn't around too much. I always compared myself, and a lot of other people always compared me to my brothers. I never thought I was good as them. And I always felt on that outside looking into, and all the strongest people in my family that stood by me were all females and all women that I could trust and feel safe with. And I think that was another thing for me as well, is is going to meetings in recovery. For me now, I can always connect with a female without any doubt and question. And it's not anything romantic or intimate either. It's just, I trust women really easily, and I feel comfortable with them. So again, the pattern and the routine here is doing the opposite of what I always intend to do, and going the other way for once and trying these other things out.
So when, with that disconnect that you have with guys, where do you think that stems from?
I think it's just, I never felt like I was good enough. Between my dad, the way things transpired with him kind of leaving and heading off, and also always kind of, in my opinion, always thinking that my brother was my middle brother was kind of like the perfect prodigal son. And both my brothers had a lot of success, finding a lot of friends, and having good little social circles and stuff like that. And I always just consistently compared myself to them. I never felt good enough, and I isolated a lot. And isolating was just like, even now, it's the worst thing I can do, because it made me feel even more uncomfortable, even trying to do anything with interaction, and in terms of, where it comes from, it was just the mind, that little hamster wheel in my head, just seeing kids play sports. I was never good at sports, so my mind was always feeding me, you're never as good as them, don't even try. Watching my brother and my friends, I always had cool groups of friends. I always hung out with the cool popular kids and stuff like that, all the tough cool guys in the neighborhood. But just like you in the fraternity, I was always like, this doesn't feel right, I don't belong here. But I was always comparing myself, watching them, saying I can never do what they do.
Interesting. I did.
Yeah, and it's weird.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry about that.
No, go
No,
ahead.
I'm saying it's a super strange, it's the more that I always told myself I would never be able to do what they did and live the type of lifestyle and did the things that they did, in my opinion. Now that I look back on it, I feel that was kind of also my heart and my common sense and the good parts of me telling me that's not a good way to live. I always wanted to do the things other people were doing around me, all the cool kids, and they were generally not doing very good things. And I always wanted to do that. And I never could successfully. So it's weird now that I am working a program and having some accountability and reflection. I look back and it's like, your soul was telling you to not be a piece of shit growing up, you know?
Yeah. Interesting.
Whether it was bullying, whether it was putting people down, laughing at people, picking fights, starting trouble, stealing, doing all these things. I always wanted to do it because all the other cool kids did it, you know?
Interesting that you refer to them as the cool kids. What made them the cool kids?
Just the
In your eyes?
popularity, just the really cool, intimidating, tough kids in the neighborhood that people were nervous or scared around, the ones that all the girls went after and wanted to be with, wore the cool clothes, just knew how to conduct themselves and be fashionable and just be just the light of the party, you know. But at that point, also my self-esteem was so bad, anybody could be that, also, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was also very jealous of my brother, and anybody that he was with or was around him, I saw in that holy grail light of, man, he knows how to do everything perfect. Whatever he's doing, I got to do that. And you know, I'm kind of jumping into the future here as in terms of recovery, but it's cool looking backwards now and reflecting where I was always mad at my brother, for instance, as an example, that he was capable of doing good things and being comfortable in his own skin, and kind of blaming him for living a good, happy life when I just didn't know how to do it myself. So again, it's also accountability. Other people around me did things that I just didn't have the courage to do, you know?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. In high school, I remember I prided myself on being the chameleon.
Yeah.
You know, I would hang out with, you know, the popular kids, the theater kids, the jocks that, you know, I'd bounce around from group to group, primarily. So A, no one could really get to know me, and B, so that I could think that I had more friends than I actually did. But I mean, I had, you know, a very small, intimate group that I actually, you know, trusted. But, and I mean, again, they were all women, or all girls at that time. But, it's, that's, it's really interesting, that dynamic that we grow up with, and how we relate to others. And, you know,
Yeah. I would get I would always get upset that, you know, people never got to know the real me, got to know the real Cory. You know, it's really easy when you actually just try and be yourself and talk. It takes courage and bravery. Like now I'm getting to know people more, and they're getting to know the real me, such as me and you as friends, you know, and plenty of other people that we've met together in this program. But when I look back, especially if you look at like old pictures of me, like there's one picture from the same year, and I could look like a, you know, a hardcore punk rock kid, and then I looked like the cool kid trying to listen to rap music. I did whatever anybody around me did, you know. So how could they get to know me? How could they actually get to know me? I was always trying to wear a mask, you know.
heck yeah, man. I mean, one year I was goth, the next year I was preppy, the next year I
Yeah,
just didn't give a shit. Like, it was so, but I mean, maybe it's just, I feel like, you know, everyone goes through that, especially at that age. I mean,
yeah.
you're trying to figure out who you are as a person yourself. And
And
I don't
again,
know.
in retrospect, it's also like you were always kind of forced with those categories, at least growing up in those years. It's like you're either the cool tough kid, you're the jock, or you're the bookworm and the nerd, or you're the weird goth freak outsider guy with the painted fingernails black and stuff like that. And it's weird, like in retrospect, as you get older with that wisdom and that growth that you get, where it's like I still have little parts of all that in me. And it's like, what the hell's so wrong with being a little bit of all that? You know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you're raised and you're in fear all the time, so you need to conform, you want to fit in, and there's no in between of that, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm grateful for all of the experiences that I had, you know, growing up and even into early and later adulthood. But you know, when you're in the midst of the shit, it's not so not so easy to be grateful. But it's weird, like you, this time around in my journey, it feels differently. I'm doing things differently. And you know, I have such a greater appreciation for life. And I was doing an exercise this morning. I have a vision book that, I started like a year ago, and I put it up on the shelf. I literally haven't even looked at it in a year. And I pulled it out and I started flipping through it. And then I wrote, just the word vision on one of the pages. And I started just writing down all of the emotions that I wanted to feel in my life at some point, like what I strive to be. And it was honest, respectful, um, um, you know, um, confident, and all of these positive attributes. And I'm like, all right, that's something really cool to strive for. And then I took a look back at it. I'm like, to some degree, I have every single one of these.
Yeah. It's just a matter of also not being so negative on yourself to be able to acknowledge,
Yeah.
look at them and say, look, I have things to offer in my life and I have good aspects in my life. And yeah, I think I can totally relate to that because I always say I want to be a better person. And I don't want to be the person I used to be when I was drinking, and I'm tired of hurting people. And then there's so many other people that tell me, you made some mistakes, but you are a great person. You are a nice person. There's self-confidence, self-esteem, self-image issues. I've always had issues with my physical vanity and stuff like that. I always wish I could kind of wear like a Phantom of the Opera mask walking around all the time because I always thought I was some weird alien. And you'll get people, I get people that you got those people that always remind you of your bad times and just can't let go because you screwed them over and hurt them. And that's on them to work on for their journey. But then you got plenty of people that remind me, you're a pretty nice guy, you're a pretty good person. And I can't buy into that sometimes. And that's part of the stuff that I need to work on is, I can accept the fact if you tell me I'm a piece of shit, but I can't accept the fact if you tell me, hey, you're my friend, I think you're a cool guy. And like, I'm glad to talk to you. When that goes off, even if you're completely honest, that mental health aspect of me always has that alarm clock of he's trying to get something. He's lying. There's no way he would honestly say something like that and mean it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can very much relate to that. So what's your journey look like for overcoming those negative emotions?
Again, it's just for me, it's just always just whatever I don't want to do because I'm scared. These last few months, especially these last like 3-4 months, have really been about just doing them, including goals outside of. I've never realized until this go around how important it is to have goals and hobbies and uh, things to aspire for besides just not drinking and doing drugs or wanting to kill yourself. That was all I worked for my whole life is go to meetings, go home and sit on the couch and just make sure that you don't drink and do drugs or want to hurt yourself and don't hurt anybody else. That's what you got to live for. And that is obviously a very huge thing, but I never realized how important it is to have other hobbies and interests and passions, little things like this idea. Me and you have talked where I expressed interest in doing these types of podcasts or to talk and put myself out there more to people. But I would never actually want to do it because there's too much risk involved. There's fear. Oh my God, I actually have to show my face and be open and let people judge me if they want to, or let people actually like me and accept me, which is just as scary for me. Right. And so here I am. You gave me this opportunity and I jumped on it because everything in my fear is telling me to not do it. So I know just try and do it, see it through. Something good is on the other side. Same thing with meetings. I don't like being in service. I don't like sharing. I don't like leading. I don't like asking people for help or phone numbers. But because I force myself to do it, awesome things are on the other side. So it's just continually remembering that going against my own grain can be the best decision I make sometimes. It's a weird little conflict of self. You have to be selfish and think of yourself so you keep yourself from bad things, but you also have to think of others. So it's a weird little balance for me lately.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I can certainly relate to that. And I was hosting meetings. Well, I still am, but one of the meetings I was hosting, I brought up that term in the big book that says, or it's not even in the big book. It's when you introduce yourself at a meeting, you state your name and then you say, "I am an alcoholic." And I have a little bit of issue with that. And I brought this up as a topic for discussion. It's that definitive statement of "I am." Um, you know, I understand that it's a part of me, but I am not all that.
Doesn't consume you and own you. It's not everything about you. Yeah.
Exactly. And, I've met people who, are all about AA. That is their entire life. All of their friends are AA, they go to all the functions. It is literally their entire life. And that type of person scares me.
Yeah, I can understand that. And that's a tricky thing for me to try and respond to and like touch on, because if it's working for people and they're not getting in trouble and they're staying sober and happy, I love it. It's awesome. Keep doing it. But for me, if I find myself clinging too much to just sit in meetings all day, just for me, I know that that is a warning sign that I'm too scared to do what I have to do outside of that meeting, and I'm too scared to take any other chances. And I think me and you would kind of agree that I didn't just get sober to sit around and talk about what it did to me and how bad it was, or how it's getting better. I got sober so I can live my life, and that's doing stuff like this in our spare time, like pursuing little ideas and endeavors and daydreams and seeing them come true and to fruition. And like I said, passions and hobbies outside of recovery help me balance recovery. When I go to meetings, I realize I need to be here because I'm an alcoholic. I need this to keep doing what I'm doing. But then when I do something outside of recovery, I feel gratitude of I wouldn't have this if it wasn't for recovery. So it kind of helps each other out. Like, pursuing goals like mine with learning languages and trying to lead the country for the first time. I would not have that unless I had a program of being a little bit more brave and willing to take suggestions and accept mistakes and ask for help. I wouldn't have gotten any of that without AA. So they kind of balance each other out. So, but just doing meetings alone and just saying I'm only an alcoholic, I completely agree. It's a touchy thing.
Yeah, I thank you for putting it like that. Because in the back of my mind, I understand that's true, and the the mind is such a tricky thing. You were talking about how it's such a two realm universe going on. We battle with ego not only as alcoholics, but I think as men.
Yeah.
And then we're laden with such insecurity that there's this constant battle going on upstairs that it unfortunately a lot of guys just can't let go of it. And it's from what I've been researching and looking into, it's generational. Uh, um, you know, it's passed down from generation to generation so much that it's laden in our genes, and it's become a part of our DNA. And trying to break that code is for me, that's how us as a gender will progress.
Yeah, and then there's also that's when you realize how you're always faced with an option. You can kind of sit in it, or you can walk away from it. You can keep walking into the same pothole and tripping over it, or you can learn to eventually walk around it. I can sit here and do what I used to do, which is, my dad was an alcoholic, my uncles, some of them are alcoholics, other people in my family are alcoholics, my grandfather was an alcoholic. It's in my blood. This is just who I am.
Hmm.
Or I can sit there and say, which is what I try to do now, which is, it's not an excuse. It definitely played a role in it, but I also need to take the opportunity to try and break that cycle. I can either try and do something about it, or just sit there and sit in it and say, yeah, that's me. I'm going to keep doing what they did too. I'm just trying to outdo them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I was in a speaker meeting yesterday, and this wonderful woman was sharing her story, and she's done a lot of outreach for other women in the program and things like that. But she was talking about how her mother, I think she died at 48 from alcoholism, and then or maybe it's even 42, but she stopped drinking at the age that her mom had passed. So this woman was 48 or whatever age, and her daughter, followed in her shoes, but her daughter stopped at like 32. And so slowly, generation by generation, they're starting to weave out this genetic code. And I found that really interesting. You know, we may not be able to stop it in our tracks. Like, I mean, should you have kids and pass along, if it is a gene, there's still some discrepancy about that. But, you know, if you can slowly wean the cycle back, you
Yeah,
know,
at least put the effort in there. Yeah.
for sure.
And I think another thing you touched on that kind of is sitting in my head to get out there too is, when it comes to always just doing nothing but recovery and meetings, again, it's awesome if it helps you and is effective. But the other thing that is a big obstacle that most of us can't handle, and it's something that I've learned is probably one of the biggest struggles for me, is if I sit around too long around people that understand me, I'm not going to be able to handle everybody out there in the real world that doesn't understand me or appreciate what I've been through, my trials and tribulations. Everybody out there is not going to give you, a bouquet of roses and a bag of chocolates and say, you know what, you're doing a great job. I really respect you. Most people have, and most people are pretty respectful nowadays, but it's not easy dealing with the everyday person that has no experience with this. So sitting around with people that have mental health issues, that know what it's like to go through what we go through and how hard it is to just even get out of bed and put your shoes on in the morning, that can be one of the biggest accomplishments for people like us, man. Sometimes I can have the greatest life in the world. At the snap of a finger, something's telling me to just take myself out and go backwards, right? So, and going out there and going to work, working a 9 to 5, working with random people that still drink and love to drink, some people that still like to do drugs, some people that don't, but just don't have an issue. If I sit around too much around people that only, embrace this and acknowledge this and know what this is about, have experience with this, the minute I get, embrace, confronted with people that don't get this disease or these issues, my first instinct is to run away or get really mad about it. And either one of them is a huge trigger for me. You have to get out there in the real world and live. There's meetings 24 hours a day, but there's going to be a point in time. Somebody in meetings actually told me a wise piece of wisdom with it. And it's at some point in your life, the only thing that's going to be stopping you from drinking again is going to be your own hand. You're going to be the only person stopping you from doing what you're going to do. There's going to be a point in time where I can't sit here and hang out on a call with you. I can't sit there and call somebody that I can't get a guaranteed answer at. Sometimes somebody might be busy. I can't sit in a meeting at all points of the day when I'm working or at a wedding or at a funeral or anything like that. Something's going to happen where I'm confronted with people that are not experienced in this and not in this lifestyle and this path that we're on. So we have to get used to that by confronting that and dealing with that. Otherwise, we'll have no defense against it.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally. And that's a fantastic point. I like that you brought up the issue of mental health. That is a subject that, it's just now starting to really come into mainstream, specifically with men. It's been my experience, women have had an outlet for it for, decades, but now it's really coming to a better understanding with men. So this is something that I've had to deal with, my entire life. But I didn't really have like a definition for it or, I've never been like officially diagnosed with any sort of mental health issue, but I know that I've suffered from depression, anxiety, I probably OCD, and ADD, but, as a man, I felt it would be unmasculine of me to go and actually, get some sort of diagnosis, and things like that. And so my journey has been more of self-awareness and kind of figuring things out on my own, what works for me. What's your journey been like with mental health?
I mean, a lot of it obviously goes hand in hand in many ways with my drinking and my addictions, obviously. But when the drinks are gone and the drugs are gone, the mental health is still there. It's still consistent. I haven't had a drink or a drug and tomorrow will be 10 months, right? So they're gone, but that does not take away the problems, because I probably have more issues now dealing with myself because I don't have an outlet to escape from anymore. That's going to really numb that pain. I have things that are going to help it, but a big thing for me is, I can tell you the first time I ever went away I went away to basically a mental hospital. I put myself away. Uh, I had over 27 months without a drink, and I lived by myself in an apartment working the night shift. And I mean, I literally had zero contact with the entire world, and I felt it, man. I just felt like I was the only human in existence. And I think it was one of the first times I actually, on a sober level, reached out to family. I remember calling my mom and my brother, and I think it was New Year's Day, and everybody wanted to leave work early. I wanted to stay because I was scared to leave and go home. And I just sat at my window, chain smoking about 3 or 4 packs of cigarettes, just watching all these kids on my block and family members celebrate and have fun together. And I ended up calling my family, 2 people in my family, and talking about how I thought I was going to. I actually thought I was moments away from physically trying to harm myself, and they both agreed maybe you got to go somewhere and get help. And that's when it really went off the light bulb with, it's not just the drinking and drugs. You had to realize that there's separation. I went away, and I think I went away for about 2 weeks, and everybody in that place was away for drugs. But they would all ask, what did you relapse on? And the look on their faces when it was basically, I didn't do anything, I'm sober still. And it was just one of those things like, holy shit, why are you here? It's like, because I want to kill myself. And that was a crazy liberating in a way of kind of opening my eyes to the fact that it's still there. The drinking goes away, but the mental health is still there. For me, it's a lot like you, where with self-awareness and communication, because the more that I try to communicate, the more I realize I'm not that great at it. And the more I try, just like the more I try to stay sober, I realize that, the drinking was just a little bit of a symptom. The real problem for me is not my drinking. It's how I act when I'm sober.
Are there any things that you have implemented into your life to become more aware and kind of reined in some of those thoughts and
I would say communication is probably the biggest thing for me. Is I never really tell people ahead of time when I'm feeling certain ways. It still can be a little bit of a struggle, and to put it into words, to actually sit there and try and summarize how I'm feeling, because sometimes I can't even describe how I'm feeling. But I never really let people in until it's too late. I'll let you know I want to hurt myself after I try to do it. I'll let you know I want to drink after I got 2 or 3 6-packs in me. But actually giving some people some warning signs that I feel really that I can really trust, that select handful of people where someone can reach out and just ask how you feeling, and actually say, yeah, I had a bad day, I'm having a bad moment, I'm pissed off, man. My job is a big part for that too. I've had quite a few moments where I've had to pull my boss and 1 or 2 people to the side, because I'm usually now I'm getting so comfortable with my skin, I'm actually a pretty sarcastic, goofy person at my job. But there's moments where everybody kind of looks over at me and knows that something's different. And but I can't rest on people just knowing it. I realized I have to tell people. And a lot of times it also comes out in apologies, where I just pull people to the side and say, look, I'm in a bad mood, I'm probably going to be an asshole today, just please, I'm having a bad day. And I don't think I've ever really done that all my life until it's too late. So communicating is a big thing. Friends and family have always been there for me. The more that I realize, I just never let them in and trusted them. Same thing with people like yourself. I've always had good people willing to help me. But when they ask me if I'm okay, again, I always go back to saying, I'm fine, dude. I can remember a specific moment with you, man, when I don't think I was sending out my morning text for a while. And you reached out to me, kind of just putting it out there. Hey, you all right, man? You feeling all right? And of course, my ego is, how dare somebody ask me if I'm having a bad day? I'm perfect, and I was feeling really cranky. I don't think I went to a meeting or anything like that, or talked to people for 3 or 4 days. I was starting to withdraw a little bit, and I can do this all by myself. And that's what I needed. I needed some random person to call me out and ask me how I'm feeling. And in that case, it's meeting that person halfway and saying, you know what, you caught me red-handed, I'm not feeling so good. And not just saying, yeah, you're right, but actually saying, I appreciate that. I remember telling you, tomorrow I'm actually going to send you another text and I'll get back into the groove. And accepting that and not getting mad at that, because God forbid people like us are wrong. That's a big thing. I think communication and acceptance are just the biggest things. I've shied away from medication. I've shied away from therapy myself personally, because I think the biggest form of medication and therapy is not paying somebody to do it or not putting something else in my body. That, I know that's a taboo subject. If you need it, you need it. I won't ever condemn that. But for me, I feel better just actually being a human and talking to other humans. And to me, that is the best medication out there, and just feeling okay and just being brave and accepting other people's helps and talking, because the biggest problem always goes back to me, just not getting it out.
That's that's gold right there. I think every guy needs to hear that, needs to commit that to not just hearing it, but commit it to their soul. Because I've certainly experienced that myself, and have similarly, not reached out for help until after I've taken the plunge. Until it's gotten so bad that you know, I I I have nowhere to look but up. Um, but that journey doesn't just happen overnight. Um, do you know, I'm not going to ask you to pinpoint a moment because that's probably not possible, but can you describe when that process started to happen of you being able to open up and being able to?
I think the more that I tried to do things my own way and alter everything that was already in front of me with directions, clear cut directions, I always had to put my hand in things and tweak things and modify things. There's 12 steps in AA. I used to literally sit there and say, well, I'll do the first one, I'll do that third one, I'll do that ninth one. I'm not doing that second one. That doesn't need to be done. It's stupid. Like I would always pick apart, like, here's a clear cut guide and rule book, but I'm going to take out what I don't want to do. And I know what works best for me. And again, it's just being your own worst enemy. I always know what's best for me, but I can't keep myself out of trouble, right? The biggest thing for me was just always trying to control what shouldn't be controlled, and having it backfire and blow up in my face because of my own self. And I think, again, man, I think the numbers game of age is a huge thing for me. The age thing just is starting. It can terrify me. I can't deny that there's a fear there in terms of getting older and life passing you by, but I'm trying to merge that fear into just a little bit of a partnership where it's like, I'm not too scared of you, but I respect you enough to where, I think this last time, maybe 10 months or so around, ago, after I relapsed this last time, it was just sitting around staring at the wall, going through them withdrawals again, shaking and shivering and throwing up, and just not being able to talk to somebody on the phone because I was just crying, man, I did it again. I fucked up again, man. And just also just the pain and the agony and the process of going through that, man. It's just, my body just does not handle a relapse anymore. I could go out and go on binges for over a year or two straight at a time. I would go out drinking every single day, all night, all day, all morning. I would go to bars at 7 a.m. and not show up to work and quit my jobs. I'd go to nightclubs, I go to strip clubs, I'd do anything to just not go home and be stuck with myself and keep drinking and using. And I could literally just maybe take a little bit of a power nap, and in a few hours, I'm ready to go again. And this time around, I think I literally only drank maybe a 6-pack this first time I relapsed. And that usually just sends me right off to the races. But that 6-pack this time around, I think because of my age and just overall physical health and everything like that, it kicked my ass this time. Or it's like, man, this usually takes a lot more to beat me up this time around. Like I can't handle this, and just feeling it. And I was tired of feeling that way. That whole cliche, I'm sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. I felt that a million times, and that's a hard thing. Is I can tell you a million times that I wanted to stop this and that I hit my bottom, but how am I going to explain that this time's finally different? The only thing I can really do is just do it day by day and keep the days going, right? But as far as that big point for me, that big turning point was just kind of just accepting the facts. Every time I try and add myself into the mix of what works for everybody else, it doesn't work. So I need to just do what they're doing and accept that I'm not that damn special or unique, that the world does, we are unique. We all are special, and we all offer something awesome to this world if we allow ourselves to do it and embrace that. But at the same time, when it comes to this stuff, we have a lot more in common than we think. And we just don't like that. I never wanted to, I always felt like I never had anything in common with people, and people never understood me, right? I was always on the outside coming in. And then when I get help, people understand me and can identify me, and it pisses me off. That just shows you how crazy my life is. I don't want anybody to understand me, but then I go away and say nobody understands me. Or I go out in public. I wish somebody would just say hi to me. And then they say hi to me. And it's, what the fuck is this guy saying hi to me? Stay away from me, man. Get out of here. That's just a crazy mind, what way my mind works. But I think the big thing is just also age, man. I think it's from a movie or a book. I think it's from a book called Rumblefish. No, actually, that might be wrong, but something with a Mickey Rourke movie. I remember he explained numbers in terms of seasons, where think about how old you are and how much time you think you might have. I mean, we all don't know how much time we have left, but think about, okay, I'm 37. Think about if I have another 50 years left until I die. That's a long time. I got plenty of time to do things and live a good life, 40, 50 years. But write that down on paper and start thinking about how many of each things in your life you have left. That's only 30 to 40 to 50 more birthdays, Thanksgivings, Christmases, like just to me, staring at numbers of how much time might be left for me and how much I've already wasted, and that it's not going to get any easier. And I got to finally figure something out. I feel like there's a time bomb strapped onto me. And it's just like, dude, you're wasting time. There's not much time left. It goes quicker than you think. You better start figuring this out and living a good life, because you're going to easily end up to that guy that you always used to make fun of. I used to always look at those 80, 90-year-old guys at meetings like, the hell, man, this guy can't figure this out. I will never be that guy. And then each year keeps piling it on. I would be 19, 20 and say, I'll have this figured out before I'm 30. And I'll have 2 or 3 kids and be married with a picket fence. And now I'm the guy that's merging towards 40, talking to these little 20-year-old kids like, hey, man, you better watch out. And you want to get mad at them, but you can't, because that was me, man. But yeah, just I think age and just not being able to take the ass whooping anymore that comes along with it. Just really, how much more time do you really have left? When you ask yourself that question and really stare at it, it's kind of, it's terrifying to think how much time's already gone and what are you going to do? But you can let that consume you and keep you standing still and being in fear, or you can sit there and say, well, I'm here. It's time to finally try and let Cory be Cory a little bit, let us be us and actually live a life and take that mask off a little bit,
Hell yeah, man. That's awesome. And that fear of mortality is a that is a huge motivating factor.
Yeah.
My dad is 75 years old. He has lived for other people his entire life. His kids, his wife. My mom just passed away last year. And for the first time in his entire life, he gets to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, for himself. And he and I were having a conversation when I went back home to say goodbye to my mom. And he's like, I have finally said, I'm going to live my life for me. And I looked at him and I'm like, I am so proud of you. And I'd only, started doing that myself, over the past like maybe year and a half, 2
Yeah.
years tops, doing what I want, what makes me happy, prioritizing things that bring me joy and happiness and abundance in life. But I mean, for decades prior to that, I was living in this mindset of, I need to be Josh, the successful businessman who is a master of the universe, because that's what will make me important and that's what will make me happy. And yet, every time I would strive for that, out of that mentality, I was miserable. Only living for myself, only living for, what society told me I should be. Miserable. And to see the joy and light in my dad's eyes, to have finally come to that realization at 75, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. That's the type of thing that I admire and really is inspiring because even in my situation where, I'm doing this stuff now that a lot of kids in like college and all do, where they learn these other languages, they go abroad, they try and see the other parts of the world. And there's so many young people doing that. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm 60, 70 years old, but there's a lot of younger kids like, why didn't you do this earlier? And that's the first thing I want to say is, poor me, why didn't I do this earlier? I screwed up again. But instead, it's why not now? If somebody is your father's age, instead of sitting there saying, man, he waited a long time, he's really old. Instead of that, I think it's our job as fellow people and fellow men specifically, especially for a man to embrace that and pursue that goal, to sit there and say, you know what, why not now, man? Like, why not? And a big thing for that is, in terms of being able to be comfortable with yourself. We talk a little bit about that with not depending only on meetings and having people kind of blanket you and keep you secure from the real world. That's a big topic, man, in life. And I find it very common among men. I know my mother and other women have dealt with it, but a lot of men, when it comes to that category of retirement and settling down and not working 40 something hours a week and providing or either for their family or themselves, the idea of being left with themselves and stuck with themselves and their thoughts, it sounds cool at first. When I'm, in my age right now, it's like, man, I want to retire right now. But then, it's the same thing when you have a week vacation and the first 3-4 days are great. But then it's like, fuck, man, I'm ready to go back to work, man. The idea of being stuck with yourself is a big topic, and being able to be comfortable with yourself and do things for yourself like your father's doing is an amazing thing. And that's one of the important balances for me is I need to know when to let people in and open up and talk to people and support other people, not just myself, and accept love and give love and communicate when I need help and help others when they need help. But I need to make sure that when I come home from work and I'm sitting here by myself, I'm not going to go crazy to the point where I'm going to self-destruct. And that's one of the most amazing, liberating rewards of getting sober and working on mental health is I can actually sit on my couch for more than 20 minutes and not think about, man, I should just kill myself. I shouldn't be here, man. This is terrible. What am I doing? Instead, I can sit here and kind of breathe in the open air where the windows are open, make a fresh pot of coffee, sit there with the dog with the music on. And that's those big moments when you look around like, dude, it's not so bad. I got it pretty good. And it's only when I'm by myself too long without communicating when I start to take advantage of that and take that for granted. Like, poor me, I don't have a smoking hot, partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is that you're into. I don't have a wife and 5 kids. I don't have a big picket fence. I don't have 3 cars in a garage. I'm not making 6 figures. Poor me. So it's moderation and balance and realizing that at some point you're going to be left alone. And what are you going to do when you're alone? So I think that thing you're sharing about your father is an amazing thing, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's on the horizon for you, brother?
I've touched upon it with you, man. And there's a big thing for me where part of my journey, it's all, I'm realizing it's all kind of interconnected, man. I'm really embracing one of these little bucket list goals I had in my life. Something as a kid I always wanted to do was learn another language and be fluent in another language. And so about 4 months ago, I started trying to learn the Russian language, and that took a road of its own. And now I'm also learning the Kazakh language as well. There's probably people out there that don't even know there's a language for Kazakh, but I'm learning the Russian and Kazakh language for Kazakhstan.
Are you okay? Okay, so they don't. So Kazakhstan doesn't speak Russian. They have their own.
That's a tricky thing, and that's how this all kind of came together. Is a lot of Kazakh people. There's a lot of the younger generation that don't even speak Kazakh. They primarily speak Russian. I think because of the Soviet issues back in the day, they were part of the Soviets and all that. So they primarily speak Russian, and I was learning Russian for the last 4 months. And I obviously had this idea of being able to learn a language and go out there and see the world and practice challenge my skills and go see the place that I'm, whatever language I learn, to go out there and actually see it and practice learning and talking to people in that language and embracing a new culture. Obviously, with the situation going on over in Russia, I didn't feel very safe and comfortable and didn't think it's the right time to do that. I still want to do it at some point in time. But I start to feel a little bit of demoral feelings within, like, man, I did all this work. Now I can't even go there. It's just, what am I going to do? And then I realized that most of the people that were helping me learn and practice my Russian were not even Russian people. They were people from Kazakhstan. So this little light bulb kind of went off, like, why don't I go there and just see what it's like there? And now to show a little bit of respect and keep trying to push myself, I'm also trying to learn basic Kazakh language. And so I'm waiting on my passport, and I would love to go for my 1 year anniversary, depending on how long the passport takes to come in the mail. It takes a really long time sometimes. I'm hoping it comes so that I can go spend my 1 year sober there, if not June or July. But it started off as something to fill my downtime. I have too much time on my hands sometimes. Idle mind is the devil's playground, and I started thinking, what are things you always want to do that you never did? Why don't you try doing some of them? Writing, I always want to write books and write movies. I always want to learn another language. I always want to do things like this, like messing around with the ideas of podcasts and stuff like that. But I never do it. I conceive it in my head. I daydream and fantasize about it, but I don't do it. So something just went off in me, maybe around Thanksgiving time a few months ago. And I said, I joined an application and started getting tutoring lessons for Russian. And out of nowhere, never in a million years where I think I would go to Kazakhstan or start learning the Kazakh language. But it's all interconnected. It's really weird. I'm on this weird path where I think my sobriety and recovery and my journey of self and discovery of self, it's all interconnected with this road I'm taking with my hobbies and passions, where all the uncomfortability that I feel, I handle it and see it through because of the tools that I gained from recovery. And I learned to appreciate my recovery because it enables me to pursue my goals. Learning how to respect other people's cultures and beliefs and stuff like that. Having my foot, putting on other people's shoes and seeing what it's like to be in their position. I used to always kind of brush off people that didn't speak good English in America, to be completely honest with you. This has completely changed my outlook on it and made me respect people more. And it's super nerve-wracking. It's super uncomfortable for me to just pack my bags and go somewhere where people are probably not going to understand a lot of what I say. And something's in me, just that little whisper. I was told by my last sponsor, listen to your whisper, man. And he said, just if something's telling you to do something or not do something, listen to it. It starts out as a whisper and then it explodes if you let it grow. And something within me is telling me to just see this through. And the more that I embrace this, the more I feel parts of my life, parts of the real core that I want to find and discover and grab and capture. I'm starting to really feel as if there's parts of me that are out there in the world that I need to go out and find. It's up to me to take the footwork and do it, but it's waiting for me if I actually do it and take the action. And I've only learned how to do the action through working on mental health and getting sober. And it's weird how it's all connected, man. At this point, it's a pretty heavy thing to say, but I honestly, I'm not sure I would even be sober at this point if I hadn't taken this journey. It's another reason for me to wake up every day and see through and not give up on this. And it's motivation, man. It's like I've given up on everything, including my sobriety and my mental health. I can't give up on that. And I learned that I have to deal with that every day. I have to do meetings all the time. I have to do the steps all the time, practice that and work that every day. So that's helped me learn. I got to practice these languages and learn about this culture every day. I got to immerse myself in this, all in or all out. If it's halfway in or halfway out, I know the results, and it's not fun and it's not pretty or healthy. So yeah, I'm doing this big thing where I'm going to jump on a plane and go over 6,400 miles and try and find more of myself. And it's something I'm looking to try and possibly capture and discuss more. And the idea of doing that's cool in my head, but it's nerve-wracking to think about that because I have to do what we're doing right now. So that's why everything works out the way it's supposed to if you allow it to. In my opinion, I've realized that the road of life is laying itself out for you. You just got to take the step forward, and the rest will work itself out as long as you got the bravery and honesty to take that step forward and don't go backwards. So, I'm nervous about doing that, but now I get to practice that with you today. So it's not a coincidence. This is kind of getting me a little excited and amped up about the possibilities and realizing it's not so bad, especially when you got support. You always got somebody to help you out. So, it's full circle, man. The idea of seeing that through and putting my journey out there for others to relate to or identify with or connect or hear about, it's nerve-wracking, but I'm learning to try and embrace it through stuff like this by being uncomfortable, like I always said. So I hope to maybe put that out there more in the future and do these types of things for myself, documenting that journey. And who knows, maybe we'll be a part of this men's empowerment network, and together we will conquer the world and get millions of buy rates and ratings and likes and subscribers, right?
Fuck yeah. Dude, that's fucking awesome. I love the passion that you bring to the the enjoyments that you have in your life with learning the two languages now. Like a proper alcoholic, you can't just stick to one. You gotta go balls deep, don't you?
Yeah, dude, and it's crazy. But the parallels are nuts, man. Like, I try and practice with somebody from Russia or Kazakhstan, for instance, and sometimes they'll, the first few times they correct you, or they might laugh and giggle and say, you didn't say that really well. My first instinct is, well, fuck you, then I'm not talking to you anymore. To hell with you. And it's the same thing when I go to meetings. When I'm that guy that just relapsed and need help, and I go to a meeting and I tuck my tail between my legs, and I think I know everything, and somebody tells me, hey, maybe you should get some phone numbers. Maybe you should share and participate. Maybe you should be honest. My first instinct is, that's right, but that's really uncomfortable. And I don't like the fact that I'm being called out. So screw you. I'm not coming back to this meeting. I'll show you. And then I go drink and get suicidal again. Right. So I've learned through this program of focusing on my mental health and recovery, connecting with people like yourself. Now it's somebody corrects me or laughs, and now I'm starting to get comfortable enough where it's like, all right, I screwed up. How can I get better at it? Because what's the other option? Throwing in the towel? I know what that's like. You need bad times and you need mistakes and pain to see the good stuff. You need negativity to see the positivity, right? So I've learned well enough already what it's like to be on the negative end of things, the pessimistic side of things, looking at the downside of things instead of the half full side of the cup. I know that all too well. I spent most of my life, probably 37 years of it. And now these last 10 months, I'm starting to finally say, much like the inspiration of that story with your father, where it's just like, it's not too late. I still got time. And while I've got the time, I'm going to go ahead and get humbled and get corrected and get put in my place. And through that, I'm going to become a better person, and I'm not going to drink in the meantime and maybe help other people, man.
Excellent, dude. I'm super pumped for you. I have had the privilege and honor and to experience travel outside the country on several occasions, and nothing has opened my mind so much as being immersed in a different culture, a different language, especially, I speak Spanish
Yeah.
conversationally. I can make it in Spanish speaking countries. And which is cool, because when I go to one, then I get to practice, I get to, improve my skills, and then I feel a part of. But if I go to like France or, another country where I don't know anything, that's even more, crazy. And I mean, you feel like such an outsider and yet curious. You're like a child. And it's such a cool feeling.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Again, it's very parallel to working a program, getting your life together. Where one of the biggest things I needed to learn, and I need to constantly remind myself, is I need to remain teachable and know that I don't know everything. The one thing I know is that I don't know everything. And when you go to you start embracing these other cultures and languages, and then you see how another country lives and how they do things on a daily basis. Like you find out how they deal with marriage, or how benefits and healthcare work, or there's so many different areas to look at. And the one thing you realize is, you think you got it all figured out. You realize how small you are in this world. You don't know shit, and that's not always a great thing, especially if you got a little bit of ego or stubbornness like me. But at the same time, it helps you realize, it's like, let me find out. Let me see what it's all about. I don't know enough. I should learn more. And how narrow-minded, I know for me, I've been. I thought I've seen the whole world. In reality, when I really look back, I think I went to like 4 or 5 different states in America, and me thinking I've been around the whole entire world is me being able to walk around my neighborhood saying, I got drunk at that bar. I beat some guy up at that corner bar. I remember I did drugs for the first time there. I slept with a girl at that bar right there. That alleyway, I almost got locked up in that one. Oh, I used to do this there. And it's all stuff in my small little tiny neighborhood. And for a long time, I can actually admit, ridiculously, that I thought that made me some kind of a cool guy. Is how I've been around Philly, man. I know Philly like the back of my hand. And the coolest thing is knowing that you don't know shit, and embracing that and saying, this is awesome. I don't know anything. Let me know more. Instead of, I don't know anything. I'm a moron, right? I can either keep beating myself up or be open to things. And anything that keeps us humble, I think, is something that'll keep us on the right track. Because otherwise, when we think we know how to do everything, that's when we separate. You know, when I think I got this stuff figured out, that's when I stop answering your calls and texts as much. That's when I stop talking to all these friends that I've made in this journey, and I sit there and I say the three worst things that I can say, which is, I got this, dude. I got
Yeah.
this. You know,
Oh,
and you know
yeah.
how that works out.
Yeah. And that, I don't know. I think a lot of the principles of AA are transferable to, every fucking day life. I mean, I there's a 8 a.m. meeting that, I'm there basically every day. That's my home group. That's where I've kind of nested. And there's this one guy in there. He's been around for quite a while, and his catchphrase is "Don't drink and don't be an asshole." Like,
Yeah.
well, that's fucking simple life. I mean, you know, uh, uh,
It's insane how simple all this stuff is, and how long, I know for me and probably yourself, we've spent trying to figure this out. You know, like,
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
had no idea how to do this. I just wanted the help to do it. How do I figure out to stay away from a drink and kind of be a happier person, be free? And it was
Mhm,
always told to me, do this and that and this and that. And then I opened up that big book and I actually started listening to people. And it's almost one of those things that you can't buy into, because it's like, wait a second. You mean
right.
if I actually just sit there with another guy and just get honest for a little bit, and if I actually, call somebody in my neighborhood or my mother or somebody in my family and say, I'm really sorry for what I did. I know what I did was wrong. Or telling somebody, yeah, I had this happen to me and this hurt my feelings. Like, you mean that's going to help me feel better?
Hmm.
Like, it's such a simple concept, man. Treat people the way we want to be treated. Be honest, take that mask off every day. Every day I wake up, that mask crawls back onto me and I
Hmm.
have to take it off. Don't wear that mask today. Be Cory, look in the mirror and let Cory be Cory as much as he can be today. It's still hard to be 100% me, but day by day I'm getting there. And the big thing that I always tell people too is, I always feel like there's multiple versions of myself as a child and as a teenager in my heart and soul. And I gotta do everything I can to, the angry kid in me. I got to do everything I can to keep him quiet and keep him locked up, because if he gets out, that's when I rest on that old version of myself, and I'm the angry, pissed off kid that never got resolution and explanation for things, and I never got validation. And then there's that hurt, troubled, sad, lonely kid, and he's the guy that I got to let out of the cage and say, it's okay, you can go now. You don't have to sit around anymore. It's okay. Treating your hurt, traumatized, damaged child self is a big thing for me. I think when we get damaged and traumatized as a kid growing up, for me, those parts of me never left. They're in me, and I need to let them out, and in some cases keep them in. And that's a big part of me, is kind of freeing myself from my own prison of self and saying, Cory, you're allowed to be happy today. You're allowed to be okay. It's going to be all right. You're safe now. You're not hurt anymore. But then also looking at the angry version of me and saying, you're not allowed out anymore. You're doing a life sentence. You cannot come out anymore, because when you come out, that's when I'm blacking out, getting into fights, and telling everybody I'm happy, when I'm ruining my life and everybody around me.
For sure. For sure. Dude, thanks so much. I mean, you've really taken us on a journey, and I really appreciate your time. There's so many different topics that we've talked about, and it's really important from my perspective for men to be able to open up and start communicating about these topics. And it's weird because, you know, as a man growing up, it wasn't just the sadness or the traumatic experiences in my life that I felt that I really couldn't or didn't feel comfortable talking about, but it was also sharing the joys. It was also sharing, the passions and the pleasures and, the dreams that I had. And, I don't know about you, but I mean, that I was just so closed off as a guy in society that I didn't share anything with anyone. And, to have this platform and, to have gone on this journey of self-discovery and overcoming adversity and, becoming vulnerable, have I been able to open up my world to, infinite possibility and infinite connection, and ultimately a happier, more peaceful life. And it, I certainly attribute the program to much of that, and I can look at it like I can look back at all the times that I failed, but you know, uh, I'm very fortunate to have been able to come back, and each time I came into the room, I was able to plant that seed a little deeper, and start up progressing towards maybe possibly at some point letting someone in. And now that those gates are open, I mean, it's life is unreal, man.
Yeah, it's a lot about leading by example too. And if other people are too nervous or scared or hesitant to take that first step or don't know how or too scared, which I've been many times in this situation, with this network thing that you got going on, man, it's, in some cases I might sit there and say, well, what's he doing that for? And then the more you actually get into this and you really break it down, it's just like going to meetings where you got to find somebody that has already done what you're looking to have done for yourself. Maybe in this situation, people like yourself, people like you or I might be the people that need to let people know that it's okay to do this, and having a platform where somebody could watch this video and they're beaten down, broken down young guy or older guy or whatever it may be. And, if they're wondering how the hell do you do it? How do you just talk like that? It's cool. I think seeing two guys like us just randomly click and just get real and honest and vulnerable, it can leave that seed for other people where, hey, if you're feeling a certain way, even if you're feeling good, like you said, because God forbid you have a good time. For me, feeling good and smiling feels weird. When I have a good time, I'm comfortable in my skin. It's like, what the hell is this? This is strange. But we need to keep doing that. And we need to let ourselves and other people know. And we let ourselves know it's okay to do what we're doing and be happy and smile and live a better life by letting other people know. So it's cool thinking about the idea of other people being able to see what you're doing and just being like, yeah, Matt, what, man, I got a couple questions. How are you doing that?
Awesome. Hell yeah. Dude, again, I really appreciate you. I love you, bro. You
Back at you, man.
so grateful that we were able to connect and form the relationship and the friendship that we have. So absolutely.
Absolutely, man. Right on, right back at you. It's weird what happens when you allow yourself to be open, man.
Guys, I knew this was going to be a fucking awesome interview, but I had no idea that it was going to be so powerful. I mean, Cory really drove home the important aspects of consistency and persistence and overcoming adversity and doing everything that you need to do in order to achieve the life that you want, forming those connections, becoming vulnerable, learning how to communicate so that we can all become more fulfilled, more purpose-driven in life. Guys, if you enjoyed this podcast as much as I did, please share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with other guys that you think could really benefit from this. Share it on your socials, like, share, subscribe to this podcast, my friends, because this is the type of information, this is the type of stuff that we are going to be covering in this podcast, in addition to finances and spirituality and health and relationships, but really digging deep into what makes guys tick and how we can lift each other up into becoming better men. So again, share this podcast. You can also hit me up on the socials. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, email me. This podcast is also on YouTube. All the links are down below, my friends. So until next time, cheers.